and welcome to another episode of Yala.
Is that how he does it? Is that how Haresh does it?
That's how I do it. That's how I do it. I'm playing the role of Haresh now in terms of introducing the podcast. So I always like to put our guest hosts on the spot by not telling them that they are supposed to do the part and then see how they do it. But not bad. You're fast.
That means I'm a fan. That's why I listen to it.
Yeah, but then you thought I was the one who was doing the Yala part, right?
I thought it was Haresh.
Haresh is he loves to he loves the attention so I always like, okay, let him just banter on it. Or I'll just say one word. I'll just put in one word.
It's killing him right now that he's not doing this. Actually, I know.
Yeah. Either that or he's like super happy that making people miss him. Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
After this episode, I don't think people will miss him anymore.
That's why I was like, I guess it depends on how people are taking these guest host episodes. But I'm pretty confident. I'm confident that people enjoy this because if I haven't introduced him properly yet, I haven't. It's actually, we have one of our most beloved guests on the show. Someone that has appeared more than, is it just once or more than once on Yala Bud itself? But we've also done a few podcasts together called NFT with Bubble Tea. But this is the one and the only actor, entrepreneur, host, personality, fitness guru, motivation man, family man, husband, loving father. The one, the only, Andie Chen.
Wow, crazy. Can I do that introduction myself? The one and only and currently unemployed Andie Chen.
That's the flip side the flip side of doing what we do, right? We always feel like we are unemployed if we don't have a big project on the line or what. But speaking of that, actually, that's not the case for you. You have a lot of things on your plate that already have come out recently and also are coming out. But the crazy thing is that they are both sort of in the same space, right? And in case you all didn't know, I'm actually talking about two shows that Andie Chen has featured in and will feature in. One is a TV series and another is a feature film coming out in January, right? I believe.
Yes, 4th of January.
Correct. And they are both around the same theme of the MRT, the subway system in Singapore or in general, right? But can you talk a little bit about the first one, which is Third Rail, which is already out on I believe on MeWatch. The full series is out on MeWatch. I can.
But basically, the whole moral of the story is don't take an MRT with me right now. like all shitty things will happen when MRT and Andie collide. There's two projects. Okay, so we talk about Third Rail first, right? So Third Rail is a TV series. There is 12 episodes and it's fully up on MeWatch right now. Channel 5, I think they are at ep 6 or 7 if I'm not wrong. Okay. So you can go watch that. I recommend you watch the NC-16 version, which I have a link in my Instagram bio.
When you say NC-16, you mean the online version?
No, online there is a PG version and the NC-16 version.
There's two versions of it.
There's two versions of it. And they are pushing the PG version because it's PG, right? But I personally only share the NC-16 version because it's more shock. It's more shock.
Can you give an example of what is NC-16 and versus PG in the show?
So there's a bit more blood. They also took out a few scenes that I think maybe was a bit too, I think they find too, I don't know, exciting, too much, too intense, I would say. Yeah.
But what kind of scene is it? Are we talking like love scene?
Okay, because I didn't watch a PG version. So from hearsay from the rest of the cast and crew is basically a lot of their blood, gunshots and stuff like that. And then some of it, they took out some of a few scenes where there are maybe more screaming and shouting and threats and stuff like that which
you mean vulgarities, is it? Or
okay, so for people who haven't watched Third Rail, is basically the premise is basically a group of hijackers took over MRT and they are basically Robin Hood terrorists lah, and they took over the MRT, and basically what happens throughout the whole thing, right? So there are deaths and gunshots and negotiations and stuff like that going on in the scene lah. So it's a bit of a psychological drama. So the PG version is just a bit more toned down lah.
I see. I mean, I haven't watched it myself. I will watch it definitely as the holidays come around, when I have time. But I have seen the BTS and the previews of some of the previews of the show, and I think the scale of the set and everything is unprecedented, right, for a MediaCorp show. Just, I mean, we're talking about a literal tunnel being built to house an prop MRT train, a real MRT train, right? And a lot of CGI and effects being used to make a tunnel look much more like a real MRT tunnel, right?
Right. So basically, this is what attracted me to come back because it was a bit of a last minute job for me. But basically, they have the whole Changi Exhibition Hall rented, the whole hangar, right, where they put planes, right? So they built a full scale tunnel inside, and that tunnel, there's also an MRT that they actually transported over and placed inside the tunnel. So it's basically the biggest set I've seen, even with feature films involved. So this is a TV series, but the set wise, I would say is the biggest even for feature films in Singapore. So it's really very big scale. And you can tell the budget is being stretched like mad. The production has been madness. We have been shooting 14 to 18 hours every day. And the working conditions has been very, very rough. But I think definitely this series is a pioneering something. And I think people know that, and that's why people are willing to put in the effort. So it's definitely something different. I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and to clarify, we're talking about a literal real MRT train that was used.
Real
right?
MRT. So it's 2 carriages. We can't bring in the whole thing, right? So 2 full carriages we put it inside, and we use it to basically replicate, like Train to Busan like that. Like they use the same carriage for sure, but you make it like you shoot it like as if you have the whole train. So that's roughly how it's done.
That's movie magic. But I mean, really, the idea of actually getting the real MRT train, that's what really blew my mind. Because for people in the industry, I think one thing we all know is that it's really, really hard to shoot like in a real MRT line. Because you think about it, like you only got the MRT only really shuts for 6 hours every day. So the logistical difficulty of shooting an MRT tells you how what a huge task it is. I mean, I guess the get around here was to literally get an old train, right?
It is a decommissioned train. Can I use your platform and like rant a little bit? Of course.
Always. This platform is about renting. This podcast is about renting.
I think I'm very happy that we are taking steps to do productions like that, right? But this experience also reinforced the problem that local support for our production is so low that we couldn't even get an MRT station to shoot. And I think that's very sad, if you ask me, because we have so many MRT stations, right? Like, why can't you just lend us one off hours or something? Like why is it so difficult? And I know the production team have tried very, very hard to get as much support as possible, and we did have some support, right? And I'm very thankful to our minister that helped us. But overall, I would say the support is very low, which made it very difficult. And I think that is something that I really hope we can improve on, because come on, it's our own staff. Can we support our own staff a bit?
I mean, I think
rent over.
No, I mean, it's not exclusive to this project. I think the last time when we had the filmmaker Andie Chen on the podcast, that was something very similar that he voiced out as well. It's not even about the money or even about people coming to watch a show or what. It's literally about like the difficulty of getting locations in Singapore to film. Like not just the government, but people, they're opening up their flats or opening up their whatever, their premises for filming. That's like really hard. It's hard in Singapore, right?
Very, very hard. It's like every time you shoot outside, you feel like you owe people money like that. Like, why like that? But if you're in like when I'm in Taiwan, right, you just do what you want, and people are usually very forgiving, and they are very very happy to help more often.
I've had, like, even when we were doing YouTube back in the day, we have literally have a permit from NEA or whatever to shoot inside one of the in like Raffles, in Raffles Place, the area, right? We literally have a permit on paper and everything. But yeah, some random passerby will just call the police because I don't know, they're just not happy with what we're doing or what. And literally, like, because, when someone calls the police, they have to come and investigate. They will come in the middle of the day and just stop you shooting and just ask you what you're doing, and then have to check your particulars, which is, when you're in the middle of the shoot and every minute counts, right? Like having to stop your production for half an hour just for that really disrupts things.
And it happens so often. I find it, it's making it less and less fun to do a production in Singapore, for sure.
But how you're in terms of your role in this project, right? What was challenging for you as an actor for this one?
I think I was very attracted to this character himself, which is, his name is John. He's basically the leader of the hijackers, but he's not a bad guy. So I feel like, I always like the challenge of a character that is like morally ambiguous. And I think he kind of sits in the middle, is he like right or wrong? Does his intention actually justify his action? And I feel like even I have to think twice when I'm reading the script. So I feel that is quite challenging. And also because it was a last minute job, so I only had a very short amount of time to get into the role, and I study the script and everything. And he's a very important role. He carries a huge chunk of the series. So there's also that responsibility that I was trying to live up to. So that was and I joined in the cast halfway. They've already shot some in the front, so I was a bit worried about the chemistry and whether they'll be accepting. Like sometimes there's clicks and stuff, but the cast and crew has been amazing. The cast has been amazing. So shout out to the Third Rail family.
For your research for the role, because you're so last with it all, do you do method acting and just go and sit the MRT or take the train in Taiwan, just to get a feel of what it was?
I actually have been taking MRT in Singapore fairly regularly when I'm in Singapore now, because I don't have a car in Singapore anymore. So MRT wise is fine. And but it's not really about sitting in MRT. I can't really method acting like by taking over a plane or something.
How to hijack something.
But overall, I've been working on my English. I don't know whether that helps. So overall, that's that.
That's fantastic. But the crazy thing is that it wasn't the first rail-related production that you were already working on, because prior to that, there was you actually had filmed something for a feature film that is finally coming out in January. And I say finally because I know a bit of the backstory, because I actually know one of the producers and the director of this show. And this show is Circle Line. It's going to be Singapore's first creature feature monster film, also set in the fictional MRT world, right? That they've created. And that project you actually shot way back, right? When exactly was that project shot?
So Circle Line is had a very tumultuous journey, and it finally got released. So that was actually done 5 years ago.
So we're talking
4-5 years ago.
2018, 2017,
2019, I think. 2018, 2019.
Oh, that's still 4 years ago. 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And then because it was a very CG heavy, they needed about a year to do the post and the graphics and everything. And once they are almost done, then kena COVID. Then sway already. So basically,
specifically because they couldn't, or at least it wasn't a good idea to release it during COVID. Right?
And it was very, in Singapore terms, the budget is actually very high. If you ask me, it's an expensive film. It's an expensive film to make. So to release it during COVID will be very financially painful for all the investors. So that's why they basically got caught in a very hard place. And then actually I at a point of time I heard that they were just not going to show the film not gonna air the film at all. So I'm actually glad that they are airing it now.
Yeah. And but this one has like you mentioned, a lot of CG, and the main antagonist almost is this huge CG monster lah, right? This monster that is stalking the literally the circle line, right? And so like both very big productions, both involved, building tunnels and simulating that thing. But for you as an actor, must have been different, lah, right? One is a human antagonist, the other one is a monster antagonist, lah. What were the differences in terms of the production in that sense?
I mean, to be fair, in my role in Circle Line is actually not super heavy, I would say. And I guess I'm one of the major characters, but I wouldn't say I'm one of the lead role, not a lead role. And my role is basically the command center, head of the command center, right? So I don't really work a lot with the green screen. Actually, not at all. A little bit.
Okay.
So a little bit of the green screen. So, but I did see them work with the green screen quite a bit. So, I think the main thing is really we don't have a lot of experience working with CGI. And VFX and stuff like that. So I think that is a bit challenging for everybody to kind of understand it. So it goes a bit slower. You can tell. So I think it's great that we are venturing into that space as well. That's it. I mean, I hope that people are not too critical, because once you do CGI and monster feature, then you are like, oh, Godzilla and Pacific Rim and stuff. So it's a rough battle, so I don't think don't go in with that kind of mindset. But I think it's shot in a very local context, like Asian context, and it's a very interesting idea. With a monster feature. I personally actually haven't watched. I only watched clips. I haven't watched the whole film yet, so I honestly don't know how it's gonna look like. But I saw a bit of the creature so far. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's an interesting take on a creature feature.
Yeah, I think one thing about this, and a common thread with even the third reel as well, is I think if anything, like people should watch it to really support the idea of how the productions in Singapore are expanding beyond the usual. Like sad guy living in middle class life in HDB and unhappy with his life and all these things. So these both projects expand beyond that and sort of reimagine Singapore as it's a place where action movie or action show or even a monster movie could be made. So that's why I found like really quite mind bending about it. Like we're not thinking about our Boys to Men 7 or 8 or anything, but this is like literally, what if a monster attacks an MRT line? Or what if like hijackers wearing masks come into an MRT line? And how often do we get to expand our diet like that? That's why I was like, both these projects are regardless of what people say about it or difficulties, they're good for the industry, right?
I mean, I can't say for Circle Line because we haven't shown that yet, but for Third Reel, it's actually doing very well. So thank you for the support so much. I definitely should support it. Go and give it a try. And I think you watch it because you're curious. Also watch it because you say it is a first step for something more. So I mean, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't care. But I do think that if you are curious, I mean, you should give it a shot.
Yeah. And I think because I mean that was Andie Chen, the actor, telling us about his projects. But he's also here today as a guest host, right? To talk about a little bit about two interesting topics that we found that we want to talk about on Yala. But the first topic actually relates to very closely to Andie's own experience. I think your own experience, right? Like it's basically an article from the South China Morning Post that the headline is literally Taiwan's rich eye a Singapore insurance policy amid fears of China attack. And the idea is about that there are the rich people in Taiwan who are now thinking about moving to Singapore as a backup plan. So they're moving money, they're moving their companies, they're moving their families away from Taiwan towards Singapore, just in case China does, decide to make a move to attack Taiwan, right? So there's actually literally quotes from fund managers and bankers who said that inquiries about moving their businesses, moving to Singapore, have jumped fourfold in the last year. And they also give a lot of other instances of rich Taiwanese buying up property in Singapore, which I think they raised an example of literally I think just last year or what, where there was a Taiwanese about, I think sorry, let me just pull it up just to be accurate. There was a 4-bedroom unit at a luxury condominium in the city center.
Get me a luxury condom right now. I would pay for that.
Luxury condominium in the city center that was sold for 22.29 million Sing dollars
Wow.
to a Taiwanese. And last year, Taiwan's Tsai family, TSAI family, who own the Hong Kong listed snack maker 11 China Holdings. They bought all 20 units of a new condominium in one of Singapore's most exclusive neighborhoods for 293 million Singapore dollars. So yeah, I mean, big money, a lot of rich Taiwanese looking to move here. And I mean, this was something that I thought was interesting. But I wanted to ask you, like, why do you find this topic interesting one to discuss as well?
I mean, I guess I'm interested in this topic because I think I have more personal insight to it. Because now, you know, the trust for mainstream media is so low now. And for good reasons, right? Because mainstream media hasn't have a pretty crappy track record in the past couple of years. So every time I look at a topic, the first thing I think is that, is it true? Is it true, right? So then, because a topic like that, I'm on the ground, right? So I actually talk to Taiwanese friends, and I can testify that this headline is somewhat true. It's quite true. So when I talk to my Taiwanese friends, right, a couple of them have already asked me about linking them to Singaporean bankers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Thinking about like moving money out, right? Moving money out, or like how do you diversify their portfolio so that they are less Taiwan heavy.
So these are friends of yours that are literally coming to you and asking, how do can you link me up with someone in Singapore so that I can talk about moving here? Seriously?
No, not moving here, but about how to move their money out of Taiwan. Money out of Taiwan.
Way more important. Money first, than
money first,
the actual
and
person.
Then there are also people asking me about like education in Singapore. How do they send their kids to Singapore to study? That's factual.
Sure.
I think on the ground, the sentiment about the China and Taiwan relationship is at internationally, it's definitely at the highest, I would say right now, right? Very high. But in Taiwan, right, it's actually, people are actually, I wouldn't say that nervous, because I think they're kind of used to it already. Yeah. Right,
so,
in a way.
Actually, there was something I did want to ask, because I think there's a lot of political tension in China right now, right? I think Xi Jinping, he basically has put himself as for the third term of the presidency, which shows that he's basically consolidating his power, right?
Yeah.
So there's the aspect where it seems like he is going to quite extreme lengths to, he's jailing business leaders. There are celebrities who are being silenced and everything. Basically, in the name of preserving the status quo and the power of the party in China. So it kind of has shown that that economic growth isn't his number one priority, isn't their number one priority right now. A lot of it is more about the power. So with all this, with this backdrop of wanting to consolidate power, and then the recent unrest and protests over the strict COVID-0 policy, there's been some chatter, and this was even off a podcast from Ben Shapiro that talked about this. There's chatter that Taiwan will be a very good distraction, right? Like the idea of like attacking Taiwan and taking over Taiwan could be a good distraction from all these political issues that they have in the background going on. And we've heard that before, right? Where politicians use war and conflict as a distraction from domestic issues. But what you're saying is that on the ground, people don't feel any more nervous now than they did before, is it?
So, okay, I need to unpack that. But yes, okay, I'll answer the
Sure.
question first. Yes, I think on the ground, people are still like life as usual. Nothing much has changed. But I can tell, like, at the back of their mind, they are thinking about, like, what if, like, in case, like, so that's why they're asking about money. They're asking about how to migrate to Singapore, or, you know, like, I don't think they are taking actions right now, but I think they definitely are in the back of their head, right? Like having a second option. I think that's the case. They also have increased their NS time frame, right? So that one is very obvious, lah. So initially they have reduced it to 4 months.
Yeah.
The NS is 4 months. So now they have moved it back to a year, if I'm not wrong.
A year, okay.
Yeah, a year. So compared to us, still good, lah. But for them, it's like for their this batch now they have to move back to a year. So which also means that there is a very objective truth that the tension is increasing. So I don't think there's a question about that. Next, I need to unpack, right, this idea that tension is getting higher and higher and higher. I actually feel like the recent development is the opposite.
Oh, really? Why,
yeah, I actually feel that. So initially, right, okay, so first of all, I think the riots in China right now, right, it just means that, and there's a lot of call for freedom and all that stuff, right? But mainly I feel once you are domestically, there is unrest, right? That will be your first priority to kind of make sure that people are settled, which is why I suspect they ease their policies, right? That people are appeased and then the tension gets lower. So when you have to do that already, why would you provoke that more? Why would you want to poke the beehive some more, right? Because once it's about Taiwan, it's about democracy and everything. It's the symbol of
That's
Taiwan.
True.
So I think that means that they, at least in the short term, I don't think it will mean that I don't foresee them being very aggressive. The second thing, which I think is very important, is that Taiwan just had their elections. So about 3 weeks ago, and the Kuomintang had like a landslide victory. So Kuomintang is basically the conservative party, and they are basically more pro-China relationship.
I see.
So so basically now the people in power, not the president, but the government in power is more pro-China relation, which means they are not pro-independence, which also means that it will be more pleasing to China, I would assume. So in these two sense, I would feel that if anything, I feel a bit more at ease at this point of time.
Okay. So that's quite interesting. That means people are not feeling more kanchong. But then remember there was that whole when Nancy Pelosi, the US politician, was like made a visit to Taiwan without the approval, so to speak, from the US president, right? And then everyone was tracking whether the plane was going to land in Taiwan, and like if China would do anything. Wasn't that making people on the ground in Taiwan nervous?
Yes and no. I mean, really? I always feel like in Taiwan, people are quite chill about it.
Oh, really?
I mean, they have seen this so much already, like planes flying past their airspace and news of like China tension. It's almost like every day, right? Like, I think they are sort of used to it. And I also feel like there's a certain aspect of foreign press drumming up their headlines. I feel like people want to read about it and they want to think it's possible. I mean, it's definitely possible, but I think it is a headline that sells. That's why there's more headlines about it. And every time I watch or I read like Western press talking about this matter, I just feel like they have a very Western perspective on the whole issue, and they don't really understand the way like Chinese think. So I feel it's a bit blown out of proportion, honestly speaking. So I mean, in my back of my head, I also think war is possible, but it's a very low chance of that happening, like, at least at this point of time.
But besides the Western perspective, do you think in general Singaporeans, you know how Singaporeans, we always like, wow, everywhere else in the world is so dangerous. Wow, US high crime rate lah, Taiwan gonna get attacked by China lah, Japan got so many problems with COVID, all these things. Do you think it's also partially a very Singaporean thing also, that we always feel like, wow, the world's so dangerous except in Singapore.
It is, I would say it's true though. Like,
as in
after,
it's true that the world outside is much more dangerous than Singapore.
It is true. It is true. It's just, and it's not, and we are not the norm, right? It's like when after living here for a while, living overseas for a while, I realized that like the world is just quite a bit more dangerous lah, and you need to be a bit more wary and have a more sense of urgency, emergency, rather than Singapore where it's like you can almost close your eyes and things are just gonna run properly, right? And there's a lot of reason, and I just have to say, like, we don't take our country for granted. Like, we really are a very safe, very, very safe place with a very strong government and good foresight. Yeah. So we are. I feel like I'm a rich spoiled brat being thrown into the streets. I mean, and Taiwan is really not that rough, honestly speaking.
Yeah.
But I can already feel like, oh, I've been so pampered living in Singapore all my life. So it is true that we are very blessed and safe.
Sure. This is Andie Chen about to announce his entry into politics.
Thank you.
In Singapore politics in
vote for me
2024. No, but actually, it's interesting you talk about that, because I wanted to ask you, like culturally, right? Like those people, let's say, I mean, you don't need to say who they are, obviously, but culturally, how do you think, an Taiwanese, an average Taiwanese friend of yours, right? Culturally, how would they find Singapore? How would they fit into Singapore? Like, what is their overall impression of life in Singapore?
Okay, so from my own experience, I can't speak like no data except for my own personal experience, is that there's a huge group of Taiwanese that really like Singapore being so strict with our laws and how everybody is so cooperative. And it's basically, I mean, we are very centralized way of running things in Singapore, right? And I don't know whether they realize we are so efficient because we are centralized or not, but they definitely do appreciate the fact that we are so efficient and people are so law abiding, right? They don't know what we have to sacrifice for that, but they like that. But that once they said that, right, but they are also so pro-democracy here, right? That like anything that the government does that the people don't like, right, it's like it gets slammed down immediately. And people are so vocal about what they want and how they want things, right? I don't think that they can. I don't think it will fit well, the governing style. So I feel like they have a very good impression about Singapore generally, except those that have lived in Singapore before.
Oh, really? You mean that if they have experience actually staying here, they would actually say a different thing about Singapore?
Yes. So the people that have not stayed in Singapore, right, their impression is actually like, good, it should be like that. The law should be, people should punish them very harsh, and then it's so good, so clean and all that. But then those that live in Singapore for a while, then they were like, it was so boring, and then like everybody is like so square and like cannot like everybody is like everything have to follow the rules or not. Or you cannot, there's no gray area, there's no loopholes, there's nothing, like they feel so suffocated. And that is usually what I get from people who they still love Singapore, like Singapore, but I don't think they want to live in Singapore. Right? So
I see.
That's usually the two spectrums that I meet. Yeah.
Then what do you tell those people who you meet and then they say, oh, Singapore is so boring, I couldn't stand it all? What do you say to them?
Yeah, true.
And that's why you're there.
And that's why no, I mean I'm not in Singapore to be a tourist, right? I'm not in Singapore to play, right? I'm in Singapore to get shit done, and there's no place like Singapore to get shit done. So I feel like it's two completely different. It's two completely different spectrum. Like if you can find we always say there's this fantasy of this mythical country that is in between Taiwan and Singapore, where like it is democratic but efficient and everything. It's like the perfect world, but how I don't think that's even possible, right? So it's basically what kind of life you want to lead, and you have to give out some stuff to get some stuff. So it's what you are like. If I'm a banker, if I'm a doctor, I would likely want to stay in Singapore.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah, but if you are in the creative line, I would say being in Taiwan might be very attractive to you, lah. Yeah.
When you say very attractive, you're talking about what, the opportunities, or just a general much more supportive network, or what is it specifically?
I feel like the openness in the country, like everybody has, like every time. Okay, so again, from a personal experience, like whenever I have an idea, right, I need to filter it very harshly before I say it in Singapore. And even after that, the odds of it getting shot down or not even considered because it's out of the box, right? It's very high, fairly high. Right? But when I'm in Taiwan, when I'm working in Taiwan, the most ridiculous ideas are considered entertained and you know, like collaborated on. I think that kind of mindset, and there is still censorship, of course, but I feel like the self-censorship is very low here. Right? And everybody everybody's trying to be as creative as they can, out of the box as they can, collaborative as they can, and rules are really a guideline here, right? Elon Musk has a tweet recently, right, to his, like, some open letter to his employees or something, and one of the terms is that, like, as a rule of thumb, don't follow rules, follow principles, right? So I feel like in Taiwan, a lot of time rules are at best a guideline. People take it kind of as like, oh, okay, well, you say, I take a look whether I want to follow or not. But in Singapore, like, a rule is almost like law. It's like, you know, sacred in a way. And
people, we sort of enforce these rules on each other.
Exactly.
Like during COVID, when you see people not wearing masks, you call police, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So there is a difference. Like right now in Taiwan, like, we just removed the mask wearing outdoors, right? Okay. But when you go on the streets, right, 99% of the people are still in mask.
Oh, okay. They go against whatever rule.
They do whatever they feel is right, you know, at the bare minimum of following the law. Yeah. So it's a very different place. Yeah.
I see. But then on the flip side, right? Do you think like Singaporeans, you know, because, you know, the 2000s, when there were large influx of foreigners into Singapore, especially from China and all that, right? You know, then there started to be a lot of instances of Singaporeans having very strong reactions, almost xenophobic in some ways, to you know, Chinese immigrants and all, and a lot of nasty things said about them and all, you know. Do you think, let's say the event that there are a lot of Taiwanese who move to Singapore, right? How will Singaporeans take to these you know, Taiwanese immigrants or what, Would it be a similar kind of reaction, or culturally would Singaporeans feel like they're a bit more similar, or what?
Wow. That's a scary question to answer.
It is, yeah. You have to choose your words wisely. It's a scary
question to answer. I would say that so far from my experience, the impression of Singaporeans' impression of Taiwanese seems to be vastly positive. Culturally, I think we are a lot more similar. So you can draw your own conclusions from that.
But any specifics in terms of culturally how it's similar? Not just about being Chinese, right? You know, because I mean, China is Chinese, obviously, and
China is such a huge country, right? Like, you know, when we talk about Taiwanese, we often think about like city dwelling folks, you know, with the same urban landscape and very similar, and you're watching the same Hollywood films, and you have a lot of westernized ideas and mixed with like Chinese tradition, and in that sense we are quite similar. I feel like we are like a hybrid, right? We are hybrids in different ways, but we are hybrid nonetheless. And I feel, I don't know, I mean, we are also island, we are also a small country, we are also, you know, we also have both national service for different both for NF for what reasons, right? So we all have our own problems, and I just feel like we are very similar, very close in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always felt like the general impression that Singaporeans have of Taiwan, whether it's just very shallow things like, oh, they love to go Taiwan for holiday, or oh, you got Taiwanese friends, so cool, let's all meet them and all that. It is much more it's much more positive that way. And But like you said, like it also comes from the fact that we are both city dwellers and all. And I think that's something that we often forget about Singapore. Like when you talk about Singapore as a country, we're literally a city, an island, and a country all at the same time, which is so different from any other place in the world. Like whether you talk about Japan or France, when you live on the coast versus living, in the middle of the country, it's such a different experience that you cannot generalize and say all the people are like that. French people are like that, or Japanese people are like that. But when you talk about Taiwan and Singapore generally, when you say a Singapore person is like that, the general profile is they live in the city.
Yes.
They talk about similar
we
things.
We are so small, right? Like our differences, someone living in Yishun and someone living in Jurong, not that far away.
Still got some east and west.
difference. East and west got some difference, but so minimal, like in the grand scale of things. And I think in Taiwan it's the same, right? Someone in Taipei and someone in Tainan, you can tell when after living in Taiwan for a while, you can tell it's actually quite clear what's their difference. But overall, in the macro sense of things, I mean, like they are from Taiwan,
Yeah. That's true. But it's that's why to me it's like interesting that it got this development also, because some other articles that I've been reading are about also about related to tangentially related to this. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah. Okay, am I interrupting you?
No, I was going to talk about the crypto side of things.
Okay.
Right?
Can I add a bit on this topic
sure.
before we move on? I feel like we talked about the Taiwan part of things, right? But I think there's also the Singapore part of things, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't get into this position of being the insurance policy for Taiwan or other places, other territory for by chance, right? It's basically our government is quite open about it, that it has always been a strategy of ours to bring in the rich corporation and now also the rich families, right? And so we do this by having a very stable government, having good international credit ratings, and keeping our currency very strong. And all this has always made it very attractive. So I think it's only norm. And we'll have track record of this from very long ago, right? Even from, remember when we were young, when Indonesia was not so stable. And we had a lot of Indonesians coming to Singapore as a safe haven. And then even when Hong Kong was having their riots and stuff, we also had a lot of Hong Kongers coming over. So I think this is our strategy. We just want to take all the money. So in a way, it is very beneficial for us Singaporeans, right? Because it keeps us very strong and it keeps the money inflow into Singapore. So we are very happy. But on the flip side, there's also the problem of the wealth gap, right? Because things keep getting more and more expensive, right? So when I'm in Singapore, I always I come back to Singapore now every about between 4 to 8 months. I come back to Singapore for a couple of months for work, right? And whenever I come back, I can actually physically feel Singapore getting more expensive. Like wow, every time I come back, like wow, 更贵啊, more expensive already. Then I feel like this is something that we also need to address, right? Like yes, we have great countermeasures for that. We have the HDB, our public transport is awesome. We can eat at hawker centers. Yes, correct. But is it becoming more and more
outreach
exclusive, right? Like is the comfortable Singapore rich, so-called the Singapore normal standard of living and the lower standard of living, is it unattainable already, right? How often can you eat out? How often can you take a cab? How often can you it feels like being not rich in Singapore is becoming more and more punishing. And I personally am a bit worried about that.
I mean, that's why, and GST hike coming up. So, everyone, like literally people are telling me that they are planning to buy a lot of things in December because, the 1%. Like I met someone yesterday who was like, my BTO flat is not ready yet, but I'm going to buy all the furniture from Taobao in December just to avoid having to pay additional tax on it. So people, it is a real thing on people's minds, and the government they say they're doing what they can to lessen the impact, but I don't think it's just about GST. It's just the whole supply chain issues globally and all. Singapore, because of where we are and the fact that we just buy a lot of stuff from overseas and all, it affects us to the max, and you really can feel it day to day in everything you pay for, even just the chicken at the supermarket. Remember when there was the shortage of chickens because Malaysia banned it? And the price went up, but it never came down again, even after everything, you see. So we just, it's almost like we just accept whatever is the price is given to us now.
I feel it's actually quite painful. Like when I come back to Singapore, right? I like it feels like we are getting more and more money-minded and less human. Right? And that eats at me quite a bit. Like I want to get a piece of tissue paper, but no free tissue paper. I must pay 50 cents, then now maybe 60 cents, 80 cents. And then wet tissue is $2. And then it's like every single action I do, there's a micro transaction, you know? Like it feels like, wow, everything I do is like money. And then like everybody is like so grumpy, you know? I feel very stressed sometimes when I come back to Singapore. And I think that is not because people want to be nasty and miserable. It's because the cost of living is putting that pressure on them that is it's not comfortable, right? You have to constantly worry about this.
Yeah, but actually, interesting. I want to ask you one thing also, just somewhat related to that. Because when I lived in the US and everything, one thing I very strongly remember, right, was people were super turned off every time if I would casually be asking about, in a very Singaporean way, oh wow, your salary is very good, or you know, you're doing well, you're making a lot of money. People would find it very socially, a very big turn off, right?
Oh, really?
And then I had one or two people who did point out to me, hey, nobody talks about this in America, like it's just socially not a very good thing to just like openly, hey, you know what, you're doing well yourself, you know, you're making money doing. They just find it very, very I don't know what's the word, gauche to talk about these kind of things in the social setting. Do you feel that? But in Singapore, it's like it's almost so normal, right, for people to be like, oh wow, you know, you're where do you stay? Oh wow, you're staying there, you must be making a lot of money. You know, oh wow, what car are you driving? You must be making a lot of money. We mean you don't talk about the exact value, how much people make, but there's always a reference to like how well they're doing in life, and that's like the measure of how happy or successful people are. Do you get that sense socially in Taiwan also, or is there some kind of unwritten thing we don't talk about what people are making in terms of money and all?
No, I feel like in Taiwan, it's also people are the culture is quite similar. Like you would say, if someone buy a new car, you say like, oh wow, yeah, doing well, all that. But not in a very specific sense, like hey, how much are you making? Hey, tell me, not like that. But like wealth is an integral part, and I think people are aware. I don't know whether is it because in the US wealth is not a status. I don't think that's the case. Maybe it's just culturally they don't like to even talk about it at all.
Sure.
But in Taiwan and Singapore, I feel when it comes to this is quite similar.
Okay. So it's just me. Maybe I just rub someone the wrong way by talking about it, being a socially
you
awkward
and your
party.
Rolex watch driving your Lambo, then asking about that. People boy song for sure.
Gold digger prank. Doing the gold digger prank.
This crazy rich Asian trying to be a cocky asshole.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I only ask because, I feel that sense, the sense of like a lot of pressure, you know, whenever you're just meeting people, after a while, they haven't seen you in a while, there's a lot of the questions revolve around, how's your how much money you're making, or what career doing, or where are you in life, or, you know, do you think about investing in this and that and all that, you know? There's a lot of that kind of talk, I find in social circles in Singapore. It's about, I'm upgrading, I'm moving to this place, I'm moving to that place, or, you know, my kids are going to this school, wow, it's so expensive, you know, that kind of thing. So it just all revolves around a lot about money and all that. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so I do feel that. But then somewhat tangentially related to that also, which also is to do with what we've done a podcast before about all this, right? Which is NFTs with bubble tea. That was the name of the podcast. But generally, I think, you know, in the last time we spoke to you on the podcast as well, we spoke a lot about your interest in NFTs and also in crypto and everything. And since then, as everyone knows, there's been a crypto winter that has happened. A lot of things have happened. Even Singapore institutions like Temasek have all felt the burn of the crypto winter.
$260 million burn.
Yeah. So, I mean, where are things at for you and your interest and investments in crypto and everything?
So yes, crypto is now in a very scary winter.
Yeah.
So basically, like BTC, which is Bitcoin, is down like I think 75% from its all-time high. So basically, it's not in a great place price-wise, lah. So I think for me, I have kind of moved into. I'm still very interested. Actually, I kind of like it now because I remember when I first got into crypto NFTs. And NFTs, it was a very crazy period where like I cannot catch up with the news and the updates and everything, and I couldn't filter what it was important and what was not. But right now, everything just seems to have slowed down, and the quality of the news coverage and things that are happening are much clearer. Information is much clearer, much better curated, I feel. So right now, I'm actually learning a lot more, and fundamentally, I'm learning a lot more. I mean, crypto has been very not my portfolio, not my crypto portfolio. That has not been kind to me. But the fact of like learning crypto has been very important to me because it's a window into, I think, two main things. One is art, right? Because of NFT. Because of NFTs, I started to read about art history, read about like the technology of like NFT and blockchain, and even like personally went to look at artists where their art pieces was attractive to me. So that was a window for me, and a window for traditional finance and basically understanding what to do with my money and stuff like that, right? And the macro environment, like how does the Fed interest rate affect Singapore, and what is MAS? To me now it's a great time to learn and understand. But if you look at your portfolio every day, you won't feel very happy.
So you're saying that crypto NFTs, everything was like sort of like a gateway drug for you to better even understand your own personal finances and investing and everything.
Yeah, for me definitely. But I also feel for the younger generation, right? When they are, this is basically the way they are going to learn about that. Because when I was growing up, I was not interested in all these things at all. I mean, I have no idea, but this is interesting not only because we can buy it, but also because we can actually physically interact with it at a very low cost. Right? It's like I wouldn't be interested to read about an NFT, but I own an NFT. Then I'll be like, and that maybe cost me like $60, right? That's not much, right? You can, and that's like, hey, I'm interested. I actually got this at $60. I want to learn more. So I feel this space is great right now. It's great right now. And for people who are interested, now is the best time to come in and learn, not when the hype is, when everybody's saying that, oh, it's going to die, it doesn't work. That's when come in and learn about it. Like, I don't have to spend a lot. Everything is cheap now anyway. So it's a great time to learn about the technology.
Yeah. I think for us also, the NFT Bubble Tea podcast was also, we were trying to look at it from an element of trying to learn more about the space. And I think if anything that I've taken away from doing that and then talking to people who are in the industry as well, like yourself and all, is really to separate the technology, blockchain technology underlying everything from, the crazy amounts of money people are making on crypto and NFTs and all that. Because that is there's a lot of froth in that whole space, right? Prices go up and down. But the technology is there, and there are the interesting things that I've also met people who are running, or at least like they're launching businesses that use that technology to sort of link the physical world to the digital in a more coherent way, and it all sounds like it's quite unfortunate that everything is all lumped under this crypto winter umbrella, right? But it just happens to be they are playing in the same space, and everyone has sort of taken a hit, even the more legit ones. But there is an application to the technology that will be useful in the future for sure, right?
I feel so. I think also not just the technology; it's also the system, right? Actually, whatever is happening right now, it has happened before in finances because everything is written in blood, right? Like something like that happened. So now I understand, why do we need regulation? In the past, I'm like, why you want to restrict me to do this and that? Oh, now you see,
Yeah.
why regulation is important, right? So and then everything is like we were not there when all this happened back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So all these rules are dumped onto us. All this stuff that we don't understand are dumped onto us. But with crypto, because we are here right now at the birth of something that we can actually follow the steps and see. So this is what happens, and everything has happened before. Whatever happened in FTX is being drawn. Parallels are being drawn with Bernie Madoff, right? And then the Ponzi scheme and everything, right? So all this, you understand. Oh, this is what happened back then, and this is what happened now. On this, you actually get to see what happened, and I think that to us, right, this generation and the generation younger, it's very important for us to see, and it's great that we get to see it. The biggest lesson is like, don't put all your money in it, like take a bit of money and kind of use it to learn and understand the system.
I think even my own understanding of the whole FTX thing, I just been reading about it and all, and my understanding is that really, it was at its heart a Ponzi scheme, but the bigger thing about it was that basically he was using the hype around FTX and the hype around the how much money he was making. He was using that to leverage the financial system to basically over leverage himself based on whatever dream price that he cooked up for his own currency. So it was really just like all these institutions buying into the hype and then saying, it's totally normal for you to leverage whatever assets you have, and then we give you 10 times or 100 times of the amount of money in actual real cash to use. And then he used that cash to do a lot of things for himself. So it wasn't even so much that he's literally conning or making use of people's gullibility to make money, but he was making use of the financial system in order and playing within the not say the rules, but the sandbox of how people in the financial system think and how they value a company and how they decide to lend you this. A bank decides to lend you this amount of money. He used all that to really just enrich himself and enrich his companies and do things that which regulations are there to stop banks from doing in the 20s and 30s in the US and all that, right?
Similar.
So that's why it was like I realized it's a much more structural thing that we're seeing now in the industry, and that's why I was like people say it's a good thing the bad players are being weeded out, but I think also, like you said, it's a good thing that people are learning that the importance of why regulation is required in certain instances, and you can't just let people just like just cook up new schemes and then just tell you, oh, this is the best thing ever and all that, right?
Exactly. Fundamentally, what is different about it is the blockchain technology, right? And that has not been compromised. This is not something that compromised the fundamental value. So, okay, I'm talking like a crypto nerd now, so I should.
No, I mean, for us, it's also, I guess a lot of people are wondering, hey, what happened to the NFT Bubble Tea podcast? I think for us, like, just a lot of different factors, whether it's, obviously, I also had personal issues during the time in the last few months, and I think you also were very busy with the the multiple projects.
I just wanted to retire. I cannot work anymore. Tired already.
Then that all coincided with the crypto winter, which was like like what you said, the quality of the information, the quantity and the quality of information out there just changed overnight also, right? So for us, I was like, okay, let's take a break and see where things are at, and since then we also. We're still talking about how to move forward with all these things, and the good things, now we have a bit of more the time and hindsight to think about it, right?
We ask your listeners, if we have a patron for NFT Bubble Tea, how many of you will be our patron? Or if we get enough, then we'll do it, It's easy enough. How about that?
But Andy, it's not all about the money, right? It's about the knowledge and the
tell that to my
and
2 kids and their school fees, man.
To school fees to be paid in Bitcoin.
And my chicken rice, I want to eat my chicken rice. Expensive now,
which has now gone up in price because of everything. Then plus the water and the napkin, you will pay extra 50 cents for it.
Cannot. Please patron us.
But so all these things are quite shocking, for the system and all that. That's why we thought it was a good time to take a pause. But just speaking about shocking and to the system and all that, the next topic we're actually talking about is it's kind of on paper it just sounds like the goofiest topic ever based on the headlines and all.
Yes.
But actually it actually is a bit more of a fundamental discussion about a lot of issues, right? Social issues that we are going to touch on. And the article actually is about a man who's 43 years old in Singapore. He got caught filming upskirt videos at Marina Bay Sands. However, the catch was that the victim turned out to be a man in a dress. And then it was after he was arrested, it was later found out that he had been taking a lot of different upskirt videos of various people. He had been using his phone to film upskirt videos of women from February 19, 2018 to September 5th, 2019, which was basically almost at least a year and a half. And he would be taking upskirt videos of victims on escalators. And then he even filmed people at his workplace around Marina 1, MBFC, and even some of his colleagues were even his victims, where he had filmed, I think, of two of his colleagues, he filmed like 273 different videos of them. But how he got caught was when he actually went to meet his wife. He's married, his wife, for dinner at MBS. And on the escalator, there was a 33-year-old man wearing a dress, and he actually took two upskirt videos of him, and then a bystander saw him and called the police on him. And that's how he got arrested. But so I guess the big twist here was that the victim that actually caused him to get caught turned out to be a man. And that's why this was what was focused on in the headline, even though it's such a crazy story that can have multiple headlines. But for you, why did this article pique your curiosity?
You are the one that chose this. As in, you are the one that sent this over, right?
I'll admit, yes. I was the one who was like, hey, Andy, let's talk about this.
Let's talk about this. Okay, this when I read this article, I read the headline, and I started reading a little bit, and then I started to giggle.
Okay.
Like, it's very giggly, right? Like, giggle. Then after I read a bit more, then I feel very crappy for giggling because it's so horrible. But then I realize that the headline is so... Okay, it's not their fault, but it's so clickbaity, right? In a way, technically, it has nothing to do with the case, right? In a way, right? Because it's not like the guy in skirt beat him up or anything, right? It's two separate issues. It's just upskirt and then happens to be a guy. But they put it in the headline to make you want to read it, and it worked. And it works. So I hated myself for denying the clickbait. That was my first feeling. The second thing that I got a lot of questions but the questions a bit, I don't know whether is it too serious. Yeah. Okay. The next impression I feel is that, okay, right now in our world, right, it's getting more and more like gender is no longer binary in a way. It's starting to become very like a spectrum, right? And cases like that are eventually gonna happen. So but the fact that it has happened is something that grabs our attention. Then the next thing I wonder is that we keep seeing this upskirt thing in Singapore, right? Like so many headlines and news about upskirts in Singapore. So it makes me think, is it like Singapore got a lot of like upskirt perverts or what? Or is it, then I thought it could be just the headlines. Like every time there's an upskirt headline, people are going to read about it. So every time there's a case of an upskirt, all the news media are going to report on it, right? But if you take the data, which I actually try and find the data, no such data available online. Like, what is our Singapore's number of cases compared to the global standard? It could be we are actually less or normal. Then again, it's the clickbaity thing. So this teach me that next time I won't click on upskirt.
Upskirt videos,
not videos. Oh my god, upskirt headlines anymore. But then I also ask questions like, what exactly? Because when actually for third rail we have a upskirt character inside, So then,
as in the upskirt perpetrator, someone who was taking upskirt. Okay.
And then there's actually some prop video, pictures and videos So I actually took a look, and I'm like, how is this? What's their mental? How is this arousing in any way? How is this Like, why are people doing this? So
Yeah.
I still cannot really get, but according to the internet, it's basically like they do get sexually aroused by it and they use it for their own pleasure. But yeah, also, is it a mental illness or what? Do you have any insight into that?
No, I think you said a lot of things that I think are very interesting. Firstly is similar to you. I was attracted to this article because of the headline, right? Turns out to be a man in a dress, and I'm like thinking of it like almost like it was like a sting operation or something where it was like a policeman, undercover cop or something in a dress. But I think it cannot be. It's like nobody does that kind of thing. Then I realized that what it probably was a transgender individual, right? So, I mean, this kind of headline basically, I think in like 5 years, 10 years time, we're going to look back at headlines and this and realize like it's so clickbaity and it's so it's just not the most pleasant way to talk about someone, a transgender individual, right? To like, oh, it's just a man in a dress, and that's what happened, yeah. And like that's where the nuance of like what you're saying, like, was this man in a dress, like, was it a transgender individual? That we don't, if you don't read the article, you might not know lah, or if you don't ask questions, you might not know lah. So I don't know. It's just I also felt a little bit embarrassed after that. Then I realized, oh, the article is not that kind of comical thing that ends up sounding comical because of the headline, right? And like you said, like, upskirt thing it's a very unpleasant situation. I'll not say unpleasant, I think that's an understatement, but it's a very bad thing for someone's privacy to be violated lah. Yeah, I mean, even as a guy as well, I don't know if you've had the experience lah, right, where there was once when I was traveling in the airport in the US and all, and I was just using the bathroom and the bathroom stall and all. That's, then in the bathroom there's this, between the doors there's always these little gaps lah, right, where they're really tiny, but if you're like standing right next to the gap, you actually can peek into the hole and all lah. And all I see was like, I'm sitting on a toilet bowl, and all I see is suddenly there's this pair of shoes, a guy wearing a pair of shoes, who's walking up next to my in front of my cubicle, and then his shoes suddenly turn, and then they are like suddenly facing the cubicle, and so I can actually see his shoes like turn and face the cubicle, and then I look up and I see literally the guy standing at the cubicle there, like putting on his belt and like looking straight into the toilet where I'm sitting there, like, with my pants down and all. And the immediate feeling I got was like this, like confusion, like what the hell is this? Is this guy just, does he happen to be turning in this direction and then he happened to look in and all? But it's literally like he's standing there staring at me, and I'm looking back at him, and he's just staring at me very intently, no smile, nothing, And I mean, to say the least, it was quite uncomfortable. But then I after staring for a while, then he turned around and walked off, right? But the feeling I got from that was very unsettling. It was very like, what just happened? Was this guy trying to peep at me, or was I just looking too much into someone just turning, or what? That kind of feeling. Then I realized, like, oh shit, this is what women probably go through every other day, every single day, A lot of interactions with people are of this sort, where people just stare at them and they don't know what intentions of the person or what the person is thinking. Or they second guess themselves. Was the guy really, staring at me in that way, or what? So it made me realize, this the idea of being stared at or looked at or oogled at, all that is a very something that, for guys, we might not relate to it or experience it as much, and that's why we think of it as a very as a more trivial thing. But if that is your day in, day out existence and all, it can be quite scary lah. And going to the point you said earlier about what is it about it that an upskirt video that turns people, that these guys get turned on by. I think it's that feeling of that you are intruding on someone's private space that is very exclusive to them and all that. And that's what I felt. The act of it,
rather than the result, as in the reward, right? It's the act of it that is.
and like how I felt, like knowing that you made the other person like feel uncomfortable and all that, like, right? You know,
Really?
that you've had that visceral effect on them. I think that's what these guys are going for. That they are intruding on your very private moment, very private space that no one else can see. That's what gets them off about it, lah. I mean, that's my amateur psychology view about it. But yeah, just for me was like understanding as how it feels to feel, you know, like your physical space being violated just by someone seeing you in a very private moment, lah, right? That to me was like maybe help me better understand why the psychology behind why some of these people do it, lah. Yeah.
I mean, I can share something that happened to my wife when I was around. Okay, I'm not mansplaining this. I mean, I the irony that we are two men talking about the victim of an upskirt is very apparent to me. But I think I can share this, that there was once I was with my wife and she was walking in front of me, and then I saw her like basically streak and like kind of jerk and run away to a corner. And that rarely ever happens to my wife because she's a freaking force of nature. She's a warrior, basically. Sure. And just seeing that, I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I realized that she was flashed, right? I was flashed by this like uncle. And then I was just in shock. And I realized that like physically they are at such a huge disadvantage, right? It's not the act of that violation, but also, you know, like when you're in the toilet, there's a good chance that you can fight that guy, you know, or at least physically defend yourself. But in a female's case, they have to live with the fact that they can't do shit, right? Like if this guy is going to be physical with them, they are helpless in a way, right? Unless they're trained. So I feel they have to live with that as well, and that is even scarier, right? To know that you are vulnerable.
But the crazy part is, like you say, fight it back, but technically, you know, the guy is not physically like putting his hands on you or anything like that, right?
But they could, right?
They could.
If you shout or you scream or you try and stop him or whatever, he could physically harm you, and that will let you think twice or stop you from saying anything. Yeah, because of that
so
fear.
You were there? So what was your reaction to the person? You know,
I basically went to the guy and I scolded him. Scolded him.
I see.
And I asked him what the hell is he doing, and then he's obviously. He has some mental issues, I feel. He's someone that is clearly not thinking clearly. So I told him to never do it again. I took out his IC. And then I took a photo of his IC. And then I say, like, if I ever see you doing this again, because it was near my neighborhood, if I ever see you around here again, I'm going to call the police. So, and then I did see him again.
Oh, this was in Singapore or in Taiwan?
In Singapore.
In Singapore, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I did call the police. And then I told the police I got this person's IC. And the police said, that's illegal.
What is illegal? Like taking a photo of his IC?
Yes, you are not allowed to ask people to give out their IC, and you cannot take photos of your IC. So I am actually in the wrong. I'm like, oh, really? Then they did investigate the case, but I mean, he's basically mentally handicapped in a way. So like they asked me if I want to press charges or anything, but honestly, what are you gonna do about that? It's such a difficult thing, right? Like you want to go through all that and then lock him up or what, and then he's gonna come out and then you think he's gonna stop because he's not in full capacity, right? And so then that's the end of that. I mean, we are sidetracking, but that's what happened.
No, and there's also the aspect of like, even if you report the police, there's firstly what will happen, but secondly also it kind of means that you kind of prolong the mental torture that you and your wife have to go through, right? Talking about the incident and everything. Right?
It was not super traumatic for my wife, I feel, because she did share with me a couple of experiences, and I think almost all female have a couple of experience, like being flashed, being upskirt, or like when they are in the toilet and there's like a pervert and stuff like that. Yeah. So to think about it, it's like so common that it's quite scary. Quite scary.
Yeah. But I mean,
not goofy at all. This is not a goofy topic. What the hell?
So maybe the goofiness of it is like why the headline felt like quite inappropriate after we been talking about this and all. Yeah. But did all these incidences and understanding the perspective from your wife and your female friends and all that, does that help you understand why some of these people do it? Because it's not always about mental illness. Like literally, this guy he works in a bank. He has a job in Marina One, and he's married. He's got a wife and everything. So that we're definitely talking about a normally functioning person and all who has this obsession, right? 273 videos of his 2 colleagues. That's like, these are colleagues that you probably eat lunch with and you have friendships with. You've seen their spouses or partners or whatever. But for some reason, something about taking upskirt videos or what gets them off. Like, do you think about why that happens?
I think about why, but I think it's way beyond my pay grade to dissect that and basically truly understand. And it's probably very individual, right? Like whatever happened to them, and honestly speaking, I don't judge. Okay, let me explain on that. Don't just cut out this part.
Yeah.
Okay, like whatever gets you off, gets you off. I have no problem with whatever weird fetish you have, right? And it's not weird, whatever fetish you have, whatever you like. But I mean, like, you have to do it through consensual manner, right? And to me, that's the line. So if you like upskirt video and your partner is fine with it, or like you get it through proper means, then I honestly have no qualms about it. But once you cross that line, then you can't, like, it's just illegal. It's criminal.
Yeah, but do you think
I can't think of that. I can't phantom the mental part of it. Yeah.
But you think there's anything to do with how they say shoplifting, for example? It's not so much about the whatever is being shoplifted. A lot of it is about the thrill of getting away with something and not getting caught. Do you think there's the element for this in terms of like upskirting?
Definitely, but is that psychoanalysis already? Like what specifically are you getting from it? I'm sure there are people who shoplift because they want the thing, right?
Item, of course,
like me when I was young, when I shoplifted, it's because I wanted that pack of magic card, not because I like the thrill. But I mean, psychologically, we are all, okay, not we are all, but a lot of us are deficient in some areas, right? And we need to do things to make us feel whole. And I think without going into depth, this is not my area of expertise, but it's just they need to do that to soothe a certain part of their emotion psychology, and I think that's probably the reason.
I mean, like you say, like we go a lot into the psychoanalysis if we try to analyze what's going on, but
exactly.
I think, and this is me just going on a bit of a limb to talk about it, but there is a certain thrill. And this is not advocating
personally, you are telling me yes.
No. Let me finish my sentence. There is a certain thrill. There was a certain thrill when Haresh and I, as Ministry of Funny, when we are doing a lot of the on the street videos, those on the street hidden camera kind. We're not doing upskirt or anything like. But there was the thrill of like, I have my camera, I'm hiding behind bushes or a pillar, and we're filming an interaction where one party knows that it's a part of a bigger prank or something like that, and then the other party is sort of just interacting normally, getting on with the day There definitely was a thrill of like, we're capturing a real slice of interaction between people where one doesn't know that they're being filmed and all. Of course, after that, we will go up to them, we will tell them, explain everything we're doing, and we will ask for their permission. We'll get signed releases, everything. I just want to caveat, we get releases and all that. And then if they say they don't want it to be featured, okay, then we're fine. But most of the time, people they understand what we're trying to do, and we're never doing anything like upskirt or nefarious or anything. So they actually, okay, this is interesting. I don't mind. But there is that thrill, definitely, of like of knowing that what you're capturing is a very authentic interaction, authentic slice of how the person really acts in public, And I'm not trying to apply that to something illegal, but I'm just trying to explain how, on a spectrum there is that the element of the thrill of seeing someone in a very authentic state, and that if you take it to a very ugly extreme is what drives a lot of this kind of behavior, upskirting. And like you, I also wonder, is it? I always hear a lot about all these upskirt videos takers in Singapore, or is it like something in Singapore society where we are very, so bottled up and cannot access a lot of websites and all that we are like that, Because I don't know, is your experience in Taiwan? Do you
Can
feel
use
like you hear
VPN?
That's true. Correct. Yeah. Shout out to VPNs. And this podcast is brought to you, but no, it's not. It's not brought to you by VPN. But yeah, I mean, but in Taiwan, are there all these incidences of?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, really?
I think this is quite a common societal problem everywhere in the world. So I don't have enough data to say which country is worse, but it seems like Japan also has quite a serious problem with this as well, right? So it feels like before we started this podcast, remember I was saying about how the society is very warped and we are all forced to live in a very unnatural way and all that. And I think that's probably has to do with one of the causes like this. Yeah. Can I jump into another point of view for this?
Sure.
I have my observation from the article. Do you realize that they completely skip over the part of what happened between the upskirter being identified and the police coming?
Skipped over meaning
they say they identified the upskirter, right? The person, the criminal, and then the police came. Right. Correct. What happened in between? That was my question. So because my next question is that I'm not gonna be upskirt because I don't wear a skirt, right? But what if I saw someone taking a video of someone of doing the act, right? So what am I going to do about it? The police is not going to come in 30 seconds. So what should I do? That was not being addressed in the article, right? Should I physically detain him? How did they make him not run away? So that's my question. So how should you actually act if you see an act like that? Because that's more important, that's more valuable, right? Because I'm sure some people have seen it happen but just kept quiet and went on with their life. Right? Because they don't know what to do. What should you do? What do you think we should do?
There definitely is. I think in Singapore we always feel like we don't want to we don't want
cause trouble,
overreact to something, and then even if we see something that we we're taught and we know in our hearts is not right. Should we be the ones to call to immediately call the police, right? But at the same time, a lot of people call police for everything also. They weaponize the police. So I don't know. It's an interesting question, especially in a very crowded place like an MRT or what, where people bump into each other, people are standing very close to each other. I think there's a lot of second guessing about is the person being a bad person or what. But actually, it kind of reminds me of a long-standing discussion that Haresh and I always have, right? Because there was one time Haresh and I were taking an MRT, and I think it was me, I think I noticed that there was this lady who was wearing I think she was wearing something bareback or what, right? Which is fine. It's normal, is what people wear. She was wearing a bareback top or something, and it just happened that there was I think she had left the tag, the literal the retail store, the shopping tag. She left it on the back of her shirt, and she had just worn it and gone out. So I think Haresh and I were debating about, should we tell this person, because she's literally standing about 1 or 2 steps in front of us on the escalator and all that, and we're just having a very long debate about whether we should tell the person, and
live, like you guys were there.
Yeah, we were there. So I think, spoiler alert, I think I just excuse me, I think the tag on your back is still showing, and I think the person was very shocked, and then after that, in retrospect, Haresh and I were discussing further, and we consulted with our female friends, and then we were like, actually the better thing to do was, in that kind of situation, would have been to ask another female person who was there to tell the person, you know what I mean?
Huh?
Because
really?
Yeah. So going back to your point about Singaporean not wanting to immediately call out something because just in case we got it wrong, that's the advice that I got, was that if in that situation you feel like it could, you could be misconstrued as a pervert or someone who is being very nosy and all that, rather than be the one to tell the person, maybe you should ask another lady to do it for you.
Is it the females that your female friends that advise you to do that?
Yeah. It was.
Oh,
yeah.
really? So they will be more comfortable if it were if
It was a female
So it will-
stranger than a male stranger.
which
telling
means
them
they
that,
will rather not have a male stranger tell them that.
Yeah. So that's the crazy thing.
Oh,
To me
really?
was like, if you have food on your face after lunch, like there's a stain on your face or what, wouldn't you want anybody, whoever it is, to quickly tell you, hey, you got something here, please clean it off, wipe it off straight away, right? But apparently, in our Singapore context, I think people feel more comfortable if it was someone of the same sex or what telling you lah, where not so awkward
okay.
feeling.
So
At least for the ladies lah, yeah.
if you have no access to a female at that time, then you just ignore it lah, right?
Then you just ignore it, pretend it didn't exist, and like let the person carry on, looking weird. Yeah.
I don't understand that, but I accept it. I won't. From now on, if that happens to me, I will not say anything, which is very difficult. Yeah. But okay, I will.
Is.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, but
interesting.
But it goes back to your point, like you don't want to tap in, you don't want to call police.
Yeah, but this is a criminal act. This is someone being violated. But are you willing to? I'm sure there's some physical possibility of a physical
fight
tussle or something, right? And how are you going to detain it? If you shout, are people going to come and help you? I don't know. I don't know in Singapore if people are going to do that. So I feel that part actually is what I think will make the article more interesting, right? Like what actually happened and the person that actually had the courage to speak up and take action, right? That's the star of the article.
Yeah. Actually, they I think if you scroll a little below, they did talk about the how the actions were noticed by a bystander, Mr. Leong, who I don't know what his full name is here, so it's Leong Wei Jian.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
He actually saw it and then he followed the upskirt video taker and called the police lah. And then police came and arrested him. And then that person, that bystander Leong, also notified the victim about what happened, and the victim expressed that he felt violated by Tan's actions. So. Yeah, it's what you just raised was an interesting question. Like, correct, it was even if it was a man in a dress or something, even if it was not say a transgender person, right? But as say just a man who was he doesn't have to be wearing a skirt, even shorts.
Whoever.
If you see another man taking video of a man wearing shorts, right? Would you report that to police?
Me?
Yeah,
I would.
If it was a man on man, like very clearly a guy taking a video of another guy's.
Very clearly, I will.
You would, okay.
But if I can see it already, it's so obvious. Exactly, that's something I'm trying to figure out. So maybe like the Singapore Police Force, if you are listening to this podcast, can you please give us the advisory of like how to act in such an instance? Because I really think it's pretty common. Right,
correct,
I think it's pretty common. So I think an advisory here will be great, and also endorse the podcast.
Yeah, but thank you for the shout out to the Singapore Police Force. But yeah, I mean some kind of like just some infographic or what, sort of also informing men of what their rights are if they feel they're being violated. Right?
That's not gonna happen. I don't think that's gonna happen.
That's what this podcast is about. It's about change. It's about improvement, right? But yeah, I mean the truth is that men can feel violated as well, and sometimes it's like what you said, like it's not about what they're wearing per se, but just when you feel like your personal space is being invaded and something could happen to you. That feeling is it's very tough to just shake off and just say, hey, just man up lah, be a man. Like even my instance when I didn't know what to do with that person who was peering at me in the toilet either, like, Yeah, I didn't know if I followed him, or called the airport security or something like that. What do I even do lah, right? And that's where it can be very tricky lah. Yeah, I mean if anybody listening to this has thoughts or personal experiences, I mean, I hope nobody has, but if you have something that whether you've seen or has happened to you and adds to whatever we're trying to discuss, please let us know in the subreddit as well, right? But yes, I think that's the that's the two,
that's the headlines, man.
The two headlines we wanted to get through as well. But yeah, I mean to before we end off with one Shiok Thing, I think in the same vein of like being very public about a lot of these things, or very personal things being shown in public, right? You've also had some like media appearances recently, right? On shows where I think you've opened up quite a lot about your experience as an actor in Singapore and all that, and they were quite emotional, right? Specifically, I think there was the show Hear You Out, where you interviewed and you talked a lot about your acting experience and all that, right? Like how does one how do you thread the line between being so open about your emotions and all these things in public as a public figure, but also needing to keep certain aspects of who you are to yourself?
I feel like in the past I've never really given much thought to it. In a way, like I just think that there's nothing to hide, right? So, and I'm a public figure, as in I've chosen to be a public figure. So I should be as open as I can about anything I should be, and that has always been my mode of acting so far. But I do have to admit that recently I've been giving it second thoughts. So I think
specifically the idea of being out there in public,
open about my private stuff, my private life. So I think there are, you can kind of separate it into two things, like being open about your emotions, and being open about your private life details. I feel, and being open about my emotions so far, I don't really have an issue, because I think that's universal to a certain standard, and I think there's value about being emotional about things. And I'm comfortable about that. I'm an actor, right? That's how I make my living. But about being open about my private life, I'm recently having I do have some. I'm in the process of digesting, but leaning towards probably you will see me talking about it much less. Yeah, and I don't know. It's just maybe the stage of life, I think it's a choice, eventually. I mean, there are actors, there are personalities who are completely open, right? Like, everything about them, and there are personalities that hides every single thing. So I think it's up to personal preferences. There's no real rule about it.
Yeah. I mean, even for myself, the last few months, there have been a lot of personal issues that have happened to me that I would characterize as like pretty much the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, right? My son passed and everything. So there was a very long period where I was like trying to think about, because we do this podcast and we do it so regularly, there's so much that there's quite a lot of ourselves that we put out there in public, whether we want to or not. I mean, literally 350 episodes of talking, 350 hours plus of talking like this, right?
Crazy.
So a lot of that debate went in my mind is how much of these struggles and these personal things that are going through my mind do I have to and do I want to share with people, right? And I think I did talk about it on the podcast, was that in the end I decided that I would, there's definitely parts of me that I want to keep private, my thoughts about a lot of things and things that go on in my family and all. But at the same time, when I was going through these things, as a person, I was actually like really seeking out whether it's podcasts or articles and things about how other people are dealing with all these difficult issues, specifically how other fathers, how other men were dealing with these issues, because I just felt like there weren't a lot of resources really for grieving dads and all. So then I started to find all these small communities on Reddit or Instagram, all that where people had these experiences, and it was very I wouldn't say comforting, but I guess maybe just the thought that I'm not alone in dealing with a lot of these issues in the world, that people were willing to just share a little bit of how they're feeling and the frustrations that they're facing day to day, just trying to think through their issues. It was very helpful to me, just knowing that I wasn't alone in the world going through it. And that's where I felt that's where it came to me that maybe for me also, the parts that I feel might be helpful for people to hear, then that became the mantra for me to okay, what am I willing to share, right? that maybe someone else is struggling with certain issues, and hearing that I'm also struggling with can actually make someone's day better. And that's what made me okay. I mean, that's where I told Haresh, like, yeah, I think it's important for me to actually talk through this, and even just whether it's to the Yalabat community or anyone who comes across this, and just understand that this is part of my identity now, and I'm changed forever from what happened, and it will be completely inauthentic for me to pretend like it didn't happen, just because I want to keep it private or what lah. And it happened to me, and it's just part of who I am, and I just have to explain what happened, such that people understand that lah.
After taking this stance, how are you feeling so far? I mean, it has been a short while.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me also in the last few months was that I think my wife and we embraced going to therapy lah, speaking to a therapist, and I realized it's just about having the space to talk about something, to acknowledge your feelings, to acknowledge that the stuff you're going through is real. It happens. You're not the first person to experience it, but and it's gonna be a big part of your life. That was a big thing for me that made me realize, talking about things is important. But how much you reveal of it, you don't have to reveal everything to everyone. Everybody you interact with in your life has a different awareness and impression of you. That means you don't need to explain to every single person what is going on in your mind, your story and all that. And it's your own choice, really, how much of it you want to give to people. No?
But that line is so hard to draw, you know what I mean? Because once you have a movable line, right, it's so easy to just go down that slope and keep moving that line, because that's what you do already. So I personally am feeling that right now. Like, I think I draw my line here, but actually, is this on this side or that side of the line? Maybe let's push it a little bit more, it's fine. So then it gets to a point whereby you don't even realize it. Like, you're just talking even before you really sit down and ask yourself if this is something that you want to share at all, right? So I'm also in the journey of understanding that. That's why I also wanted to see where you are.
Yeah, but that's a good point. That sometimes it's other people who are pushing that line for you, right?
And they push and they push, and not push, because once they also don't know where the line is already, right? So once it's blurred, they can get quite aggressive and insensitive lah. So I'm also wary about that.
Yeah. So it's I admit it's not I'm not in a I know exactly how to deal with all these issues and all, but it's definitely a lot more where I just go by how I feel about it in the moment lah. If I don't feel like talking about it, I just guys, I'm just not something I want to touch on at this point or what lah, and a lot of, I think there have been even people who reached out to me, hey, let's meet up and talk about it, and all. I'm like, not really looking forward to talk about it at this point, because I think it's people, not everyone knows how to hold that space for someone else to talk very well.
It's so hard lah. I mean, like when I talk to Haresh, sometimes like you are not in yet or something, right? I chat with Haresh. He admitted, telling me that like it's also difficult for him to find that line, and he's so close to you, right? And even he has to like, what's the amount of space that is the right wide, so it is difficult lah. It is difficult. Yeah.
And sometimes it's a matter of, I don't feel like I don't want to put a crimp in someone else's day by talking about a very sad issue. There's almost, I feel like sometimes I need to manage the emotions of people when I talk to them as well.
I mean, if it's like a close friend and a sincere friend, then for sure. I mean, for sure.
But definitely, you would also feel like sometimes you don't want people to like, let's say, if it's someone's birthday or something like that, you don't want to go there and they're like, okay, now let's talk about sad things that happen to me, that kind of thing. There are those emotions that happen as well, right?
I guess it's tag long, right? Like the last time when we talk after a long while, then I'm like, hey, are you okay? You also like kind of have to gauge on a case by case basis, lah, right? In a
correct.
way, which is not easy for. I think most people won't have the capacity to actually gauge that space. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, so for you, like, it's just basically a process now of like, you're sort of recalibrating, like you're saying about how much you want to share and all that.
I feel like once you're with your public figure, you are constantly recalibrating because you are always changing and growing and consuming different content and thinking about stuff. But I feel like I'm in the midst of a big recalibration. Yeah.
Okay. But I think one thing that's always been like quite a constant thread in your media appearances or your social media, or even just talking to you on this podcast, all this, I think you've always been very helpful to share a lot of ideas with people, whether it's about the creative line or even just thoughts about being a parent and all these kind of things. You've always been very helpful to share, and I think that's what people gravitate towards, this openness, this frankness, and this willingness to learn and to also share ideas about things. So I think it's as you calibrate that aspect of things, it's worth keeping the back of your mind also.
Oh, thank you. Okay, okay. I see where you're going with this. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
But carry on. What do you say?
No. I'm just trying to tell Haresh that you see, you hear that? You're getting dethroned.
Yeah. No, it's not an easy thing. Even myself, I also am learning how to just to understand the mood in the room and the space and how much to talk and how much to hold back and listen to people talk and all. Even for us, when we interview, say, ministers or something, we get a lot of feedback. Hey, you guys should have pushed him further and all these things. But a lot of times, it's a bit of it's a dance, right? You can't, 100%. You can't just be, when leading a discussion doesn't mean you just pull the person and twirl them around and everything. You kind of got to react to each other and all. So it's something that we're also trying to learn and improve on as well.
I also think it's your core and your pillar, right? Which I think is why like I'm a fan of your podcast, right? And I'm the one that volunteered, like, if you all need a replacement, I can help, right? So I'm the one shamelessly saying, not because I got nothing to do, but because I feel like there is something important here. Like there's a voice, and that you guys have always been true, and your actions have proven it all the way since MOF times, YouTube channel time, right? And it's been very clear. And I think more than the dance is also that who you guys are as a core, and you guys don't move away from that. I think it's what keeps you authentic, sincere, and that should be your guiding light, and don't listen to anybody else. Like just what you and Haresh feel. I think you guys have a good consensus. Yeah.
Wow, thanks, man. Wow, this powerful endorsement there. We're gonna like this is gonna be like people gonna say, oh, this is a puff piece by Andie.
Puff piece by Andie. I said transfer over the payment later.
But yeah, I mean, I think this definitely we will be. You still be seeing a lot of Andie. Whether on the big screen or small screen or on your social media and all. But if people want to like really get a slice of Andie Chen in the next month to a year, like where should they be looking for you?
If you want to look at my work and stuff, like my Instagram, I've stopped posting more personal stuff, but I still talk about my work and the things that I'm passionate about there. But if you want to know what I'm thinking, you can go to my Twitter, but it's very weird. I have to warn you, because I use my Twitter in a way of taking notes of something, or like when I'm trying to figure out something. And
taking notes, that means like you're in a meeting, then you're, for example,
tweeting. No, like when I'm reading something, or when I hear something from someone, and it strikes me, then I will write it down to keep note. So I actually do my Twitter. I write it for myself. So I sometimes go back and take a look at, like, okay, the past week, what are the things that caught my attention, and like if I'm trying to figure something out, like logically, is my line of chain of thinking logical? Like, why do I come up with this statement? Then I will try and break it out and type it out, and then I'll post it on Twitter. So, and sometimes like quotes from things I've read. So in a way, it's not very polished.
I see. I
But
see.
if you are interested in how my mind is working, the weird way it's working, then I think you can use Twitter, because I have no stress with Twitter,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't have a lot of following there, and I basically you can tweet all you want and it won't flood anybody. So I that's how I use it right now. Yeah.
So why specifically Twitter of all places to do this though?
Because
Like
it's
you mean
just
you could take notes. You could take notes on just in private notes app, but you want to put it on Twitter for a reason, I suppose.
I think I think there is a value of it being okay. I wouldn't say it's a value of it being public, but that's a good question. Let me think. Why do I make it public? Right, that's the question. I think probably there's a part of me that wants to be understood. Probably,
okay.
And then maybe that is a way of me trying to let people actually see what I am, who I am, and what's going on in my head. Probably that's the reason. That's a good question. I need to think more about that. Yeah, but But yeah, there's something there for sure. Yeah.
I see the parallels with we when we were building our audio podcasting service called Folklory, one thing we decided was we were going to every week we would release a newsletter about the process of building the business. It's a part of a movement called Build in Public, where basically you put everything out there about your successes and failures as a startup. All the ugly warts and all the good parts and the bad parts. You just put it out there in public and you talk about what you're learning from it as you do it. And for us, it's been quite interesting in the sense that we literally have a meeting every week where it comes up like, okay, what was good and what was bad. So it kind of forced us to like, okay, every week we, rather than just whether focus on the bad things or what, can we think of something that was good that happened this week to the business and all that, and to what we did well. And we also just put our KPIs out there so that it's all public that if we, this is what we're aiming towards, and you can help us or you can just follow us and understand. Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was such a refreshing way to how like a lot of startups are stealth mode and we don't reveal this and we don't reveal that. For us, it's literally, okay, we're trying to do this, we're going to make a lot of mistakes, but if you're interested in the process and maybe it might be helpful for you, even if this thing doesn't work out, like, do follow and just check it out. So maybe in that sense, it's quite a build in public for your own, the questions in your
I think
mind
there's
and everything.
something, after you ask that question, I do think there's something egotistical about it that I need to re-examine also. This need to be understood. Maybe there's something to be re-examined for sure.
But it's an interesting question. But okay, as always, we always end on a very light-hearted note with one Shiok thing. And Andie, what is your one Shiok thing?
This morning, just before our podcast recording, my wife is watching Netflix outside, and she was watching Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
Which is something I watched when it released back in, I think, early 2000s or something, 90s. And then I remember I liked it then. But I knew that there was a lot I couldn't get as I grew older, right? Because it is not it is a very deep piece of work. So like when I was watching like snippets, scene by scene, like it's so good. It's a masterpiece. And not just, Robin Williams. Yeah, that's one of the best performances I've ever watched in any film in my whole life, right? And then not just that, even like Matt Damon and everybody in that film, and just the directing and everything. The script was just, it just makes me so thankful that I can watch a product like that, and it holds up after so long. Yeah, it's on Netflix, so go watch it.
Yeah. Wow, awesome, man. Like, is it something that is there a certain movie or anything that you regularly watch to inspire yourself? Like, do you have something that you always watch or listen to inspire yourself?
I don't know whether it's age or not, but me and my wife, like right now, I realize there is a certain truth about film and television content, which is very apparent from the performance, right? So, and usually the performance is determined, the tone and the whole thing is determined by the director or the producer, right? So, like, you just need like 3 seconds of a film to know whether it's something I'm gonna like, because whether it's truthful or not, or whether it's just a entertaining piece, which they have their place, but I find myself being very attracted to just very truthful production of late. Yeah.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
I
about
mean,
you?
no, I mean for me, one recent movie that I caught again was Interstellar, and it's and then it was, I think it's about 8 years old already. The movie is about 8 years old, but to think about like a movie like that is just about it is really centered on a father's relationship with his daughter, and what the lengths to which he'll go to try and get back to her. And then that whole idea of like going to space and playing with space time. This crazy idea kind of movies, I don't know if they still exist in Hollywood anymore, because everything is now superhero franchise movies and all. So there this one-off ideas that they exist as one movies, and they're just like, it blows my mind that was just 8 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago, and but we already these kind of movies are so rare, really, like big budget, big adventure, mind bending kind of show. So it did inspire me a lot about like that we sometimes in life we only have this window to really execute on something that we believe in, and you just got to do it while you can, right?
Yeah, I mean that's Christopher Nolan, so the odds of it happening again is still there, like,
it's still there,
he's gonna make crazy stuff that everybody will watch. But I can share, I also heard recently from, I think it's Casey Neistat on Rich Roll podcast, right? He said, there was a line that he said, like, the gateway to film and television production is so much lower now. It's so easy, right? Everybody can make a YouTube video, everybody can make a video, everybody can make film, make content. But it feels like the high, great quality content, right, is getting lesser. Yeah. So the overall volume is increasing, but the good content is actually decreasing. I think that's a lot for us to think about as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, I think someone was just reflecting on like, if you spend an hour on TikTok, the first 10 minutes are fantastic. The algorithm is feeding you the best shit. But if you think about the last 10 minutes of the hour that you spend on TikTok, the quality is so different from the first 10 minutes. So it just tells you that there's a lot of content, but not all of it is great. And there's still a lot of room for great content to come forward.
And you can never only spend 10 minutes on TikTok. That's a lie. That's a myth.
It's a lie. 10 minutes, I only just got through like maybe 5 dance videos or all that stuff.
No way you will spend 10 minutes.
Correct. But actually, speaking of spending a lot of time into something, my one Shiok Thing is something that it's going to come with a warning. It's a game that was released in October on the PC, and recently it came on the Xbox, and it's super addictive. It's the kind of like game that you never expect you to spend like hours and hours on it. But it's a game called Vampire Survivors. I just came across it last weekend because I saw someone was recommending it on Reddit, and then I just tried it, and it got me hooked for at least a few days, right?
Damn.
Where it was like you just end up spending from what you think is just 15 minutes, then becomes an hour, then it becomes 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Right. So I just coming with a warning that it's very fun, it's very addictive, but only do it if you can afford the time.
Vampire
Survivors, yeah. It's
such
one of those
crappy
games.
Name. Such a crappy name, though.
Crappy name. You look at it, it's like, what the hell? What kind of Castlevania, like, Super Nintendo graphics are this? But the whole thing is made for you to just sink into and just lose hours. So it comes with a warning that at one point I was like, oh my god, I will end up drowning in this if I continue doing it. So I told myself, okay, don't touch it for a while until at least I get my shit done and all. Yeah. But yeah,
Another
cool.
topic for another day, but like tech is
Addiction.
developing way beyond our capability or willpower already.
Yeah,
way beyond.
exactly,
Yeah, it's just
exactly.
we are helpless and hopeless against them.
Yeah, and it's TikTok or games, the algorithms that just perfect. No, they're perfect
Just
already.
impossible. So don't even try. Just don't even.
Yeah.
Don't even. Yeah.
That's right. But cool. Thanks.
All right, man.
Thanks so much for doing this, Andie.
It's a very long podcast.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, we got through very deep, dark topics and big issues in this podcast.
All right,
but yeah, we will hopefully see you again. Not too long from now, especially and with Haresh back as well. Then we have then at least the racial mix a bit more reflective of Singapore society.
Yes,
but cool.
Sure. Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, everybody.